So let us start. And before I start my third lecture, I would like to make two small announcements. One is that from the earlier lectures, you will find the tutorials in the site anuvidya.in assignment, and you have to send your response to by email to newtoncourse@gmail.com. Thank you. So now, I have been talking about magnetic Newton scattering. Previous day, the very first lecture was to make you motivated. Why should we use neutrons in studying magnetic materials? And the second lecture was more on the little bit of the first lecture continuation. Of course, I didn't give that, complex examples because down the line you will see many such examples from magnetism and magnetic area, the use of neutrons. But I continued that, and then I started with the fundamentals of neutron scattering, how neutron can deal with magnetic materials. So I'm going to that. So as you see, I'm just flashing through my earlier view graphs and some kind of, so this is the essential part, neutron magnetic moment. This is the essential part. The neutron magnetic moment interacts with the atomic or ionic magnetic moment by this B1. Okay, and neutron magnetic moment, the Pauli spin matrix is there, and the nuclear magneton. This is very tiny compared to the Bohr magneton, which comes from the electronic magnetic moment, because neutron magnet is in the denominator. And then I was talking about then when there is interaction between neutron and the atom, particularly magnetic atoms, even the atom is magnetic, you cannot forget about the neutron-nucleus interaction that is always there, whether atom or ion is magnetic or not magnetic. Nucleus, as you know, it is always there. So that's why the nucleus interacts with the neutron, and that is why this nuclear force, and that interaction strength was given by this empirical formulas by Fermi's. Okay, that function is there because the force is there only when there is nucleus, because of short-range nature. And in that strength, the strength of that interaction, basically the scattering length which we call between neutron and the nucleus, is nothing but Bg. This is the for neutron when it gets scattered of an atom or ion for the jet. This mouse as well for the jet nucleus of one particular material. So this for corresponding X-ray case, as I told you on the other day, you have the electronic, all the Z electrons are there for an atom or ion. So all Z electrons, they scatter X-ray because electrons are having charge, and X-ray predominantly is there is electric field. So the interaction, electromagnetic interaction between the X-ray and this charge cloud of the atoms or ions by this Coulombic interaction essentially. And then I said this F for X-ray case, there is a form factor. Why it is so? Because X-ray wavelength is angstrom, and this charge cloud, the physical dimension is also about angstrom. So the probe can see this electronic charge cloud as an extended structure, and form factor is nothing but wavelength X-ray. Sorry, not the wavelength, X-ray wavelength. Charge cloud dimension, it is of the same order. So the probe will see this and extended form factor is there. And as you know, the form factor is nothing but form factor always in the Q space, and form factor is nothing but the Fourier transformation of the physical quantity in the real space. So when we talk about F, very precisely F is a function of Q, and so F of Q, which I go next. So F of Q as a function of Q, the magnitude of Q actually 4 pi sin theta per lambda, and so it is a Fourier transformation of the charge cloud in the real space. Okay, so that is the corresponding to X-ray case. But for the neutron case, I told you that the neutron which we use typically of milli-electron volt energy, and that corresponds to about 1 angstrom de Broglie wavelength. And compared to the probe, this that is 1 angstrom. Compared to that, the nucleus dimension is, as you know, 5 orders of magnitude smaller. In other words, nucleus is just a point. So the probe does not see nucleus as if there is any structure. So in other words, there is no form factor in this case. So as a result, the B, so-called the scattering amplitude due to this neutron, when it is getting scattered from a particular nucleus, jth nucleus, it is a constant. So it does not depend upon 2 theta or Q sin theta upon lambda. In other words, this B value for a given atom, let us say in your system, whether that atom contributes to a Bragg peak at a lower angle, lower 2 theta, or let us say at very high angle, let us say 100 degree 2 theta, so the contribution of B will remain unchanged because it does not have any decay with respect to as a function of 2 theta, unlike the X-ray case. So I go here. This one, as you see, let us say for X-ray case, if you take iron 2 plus and you see at this forward scattering 2 theta equal to 0, that is the maximum form factor, and then as you go higher and higher angle, this form factor decays, and this form factor, it is a multiplicity factor in your structure factor, so as a result, at higher 2 theta, your effective intensity, if a Bragg peak is occurring at a higher 2 theta scattering angle, you will see less intensity compared to the one Bragg peak which is coming at a lower angle, though the atom responsible for both the peaks is same, that is, let us say Fe2 plus. This is what is the point. It is with regard to X-ray. I also talked about another factor which is known as the temperature factor, that is essentially the de Broglie factor, that is essentially due to the deviation of atomic position from its mean position. So root mean square displacement. So that causes the intensity, the Bragg intensity, to go down as you go more and more 2 theta. But this factor is there for both X-ray as well as neutron, of course. So this is what. So B would be 0. That means that there is no intensity reduction due to this de Broglie factor, provided the atoms are frozen, atoms are not vibrating with respect to their mean position at all. So that is not the case. Even at t equal to absolute 0 also, you might see the quantum effect. So that is not the case. But of course, it is needless to say that if you do an experiment at much higher temperature, then this factor will be more. Or if you have a sample where the lighter atoms are there, they are more likely to be oscillating with a larger amplitude with respect to their mean position. For example, oxygen can have larger B. In fact, indeed it is so. Most of the oxide, let us say tungsten metal oxides, you see for oxygen, B is much larger than the metal atoms, because metal atoms being heavier. That is in general so. So this factor is there for both cases. But X-ray form factor is there. For corresponding this neutron scattering, the B is constant. It is a flat. Okay, it is a flat. Whatever be the value here, the value remains same. But then question is, for neutron scattering, is there any form factor? Answer is yes. if you deal with magnetic materials. And that is the topic of my lecture, as you know. And why? Because when you deal with magnetic atoms or magnetic ions, what is the picture you have in mind? That these unpaired electrons at certain shells, for example, tensor metal elements, 3D tensor metal elements, at the 3D electronic shell, you have unpaired electrons, okay? Or for rare earths, it is the 4f shell where you have unpaired electrons. So those electronic shells, what is there? The magnetization, net magnetization. So magnetization density at that particular shell in real space. So now you can imagine, so if you have a magnetic element or magnetic atom or ion, in that case, you have so magnetization density. So this is the real space I am talking about. So that means you are really looking at an atom or ion magnet which is magnetic and looking at the magnetization density due to, let us say, if you are talking about iron, Fe pure or Fe2 plus, you are looking at the 3D shell. How much is what is the magnetization density distribution in the real space? And if you do the Fourier transformation of that, you get some factor which is again called form factor. So that is in Q space. So Fourier transformation of the magnetization density distribution in the real space, let us say for tensor metals, 3D tensor metal for the 3D state, for rare earths is 4f state, for actinide it is 5f state, and so on. So you get form factor. Now here form factor is relevant for magnetic scattering because your probe de Broglie wavelength is again angstrom because it is a neutron milli-electron volt energy, and the atomic that magnetic magnetization density distribution, that structure is also of that length scale. As you know, the atomic shell, that orbital dimension also about angstrom. So probe will see an extended object as far as magnetization density distribution is concerned in the atomic shells like 3D, 4F, and so on. That's why for magnetic neutron scattering, you do have form factor. But of course, as you can imagine, I must clarify at this point, in the case of X-ray diffraction, all the electrons, all Z electrons, atomic in your atom or ion, that electronic charge distribution, that Fourier transformation of that gives you form factor. Whereas in magnetic case, only the magnetization density distribution, means magnetization arising out of unpaired electron in the shell of 3D or 4F, that causes this form factor. Okay, so that's why this is the form factor dependence. Okay, now that means what is the message out of this? See, this couple of concepts you must have if you want to use neutron in case of magnetic material. So that's why invariably, if you have already done this neutron diffraction, some of you, I am sure, that what you see here, only over certain 2 theta, certain scattering angle, up to certain scattering angle, typically 50 degree or 40 degree or 60 degree 2 theta degree, you see magnetic Bragg peaks. But at higher 2 theta, you don't see magnetic Bragg peaks. So what happens? Why the intensity is not there? This is one of the most promising reason that you see the form factor which occurs. I again go back to the expression. It is the expression is similar. It is a form factor is a multiplicative. If this guy is 0 or this guy equivalent, this guy is 0, let us say, then obviously there is a structure factor is 0. Then the structure factor mod square is only your observed intensity proportional to that. So that's why when you do neutron diffraction experiment, when you do neutron So when you do this neutron diffraction for magnetic material, when you look for magnetic Bragg peaks, you have to always design your instrument such a way that you get your instrument able to measure from very relatively lower 2 theta, and instrumental resolution, spatial resolution is better over this lower 2 theta range. because your intensity anyway going to fall after certain q, after certain 4 pi sin theta per lambda, after certain 2 theta scattering angle. So there is no point in looking here. But of course, if you want to do crystal structure analysis, then these data are more powerful, because you know delta d by d will depend upon the at higher 2 theta, it will be more effective to see any change. Okay, I will not go into that. Now, if you read the diffraction theory, that is what you learn all these. So, in summary, so far what I said, let me summarize. When you are doing X-ray diffraction, due to the Coulombic interaction between the electric field vector and all the electrons charge cloud, you get the form factor. So corresponding to that, in magnetic case, you get form factor only arising due to unpaired electrons. That means the orbital where there is non-zero magnetic moment. So real space magnetization density distribution, Fourier transformation of that causes you the f of q in case of magnetic neutron scattering. If you want to speak little more, that if you say f of q in case of neutron diffraction, magnetic neutron diffraction, and f of q in case of X-ray, which one will be falling faster? You can think about it. I will not give the answer here. F of q in case of X-ray diffraction and f of q in case of magnetic neutron diffraction for the same atom, let us say Fe2 plus, which one will fall faster? Okay, this is what you can think about. Now, next one. Now, another important concept here, I need to spend maybe 10 minutes or more, because this is very, very relevant for magnetic scattering using neutrons. Of course, I will not be doing the detailed derivation, which the reference books you can always see, but since you will be more or less the user of neutron scattering, so if you know this end of this exercise, what you need to know, so from that angle, this concept which I am going to give to you today, that will be adequate enough. So what is that? Now, this is something I am going to tell you, that when you do magnetic neutron diffraction or scattering from a magnetic atom by using neutron, what neutron looks at as far as magnetic moment of the atom is concerned. Either in a scattering experiment, in a diffraction experiment I am talking about. So in that sense, so when I talk about diffraction experiment, this is my incident wave vector ki of the neutron. So that means you have to think like this. Neutron is coming like this from the reactor, and you have the sample here. So if this sample is not there, neutron would have passed through directly. So this is your incident wave vector, right? That is the way thing. So as if sample is sitting here, scatterer is sitting here. Now neutron is falling, so this is your incident ki, right? From it is coming from reactor core to the beam hole like this, okay? So due to the presence of the sample, due to the presence of the scatterer at this point, so there is a change of this k vector, okay? Momentum vector. So that is your kf. So it has changed the direction. And this angle, as you know, this is called your scattering angle, 2 theta, which is twice of the Bragg angle, okay? So that means neutron gets scattered at an angle of 2 theta with respect to the forward direction, with respect to the initial momentum direction, okay? So this is 2 theta. So that defines my kf. And as you know, since neutron is getting scattered this way, I have to place a detector here to measure this neutron. In fact, in an experimental scenario, we place detector all over, okay? And then we can sense that this is the momentum transfer direction. And by definition, the momentum transfer Q, this is the momentum transfer Q, is initial K minus final K. Ki minus Kf. This is small k, I'm sorry. So Ki minus Kf is nothing but the Q. This is called momentum transfer. So I must tell you that incident wave vector, outgo and scattered wave vector, and the momentum transfer. Okay, all three vectors, they lie in one single plane. In one single plane. Okay. Suppose incident, your experimental situation is such that beam falls horizontally on the sample, and you have kept a detector. Of course, it gets scattered over all over 4 pi solid angle, as you know. But let us say you are measuring only in the horizontal plane. Your detector is kept at the horizontal plane. So this is Ki, this is Kf, because detector is there, so it is in the horizontal plane, and this is my Q. So that is also in horizontal plane. So I am talking about a simpler picture where your scattering takes place in the horizontal plane. But that is not necessary. You can have vertical plane, you can place detect anywhere. That is a matter of how you have designed your instrument. Okay. So now my question is, let us say you have a magnetic moment attached to an atom or ion, and that is your direction. Okay. This is here I have shown only S, you can say mu. So this is the electronic moment, electronic spin, or electronic moment mu. So this is my moment. So this concept you have to understand very thoroughly. I'll keep repeating. If you understand this, a 90% job is done. Okay. So you can come and do experiments using Newton on magnetic materials. Now this vector, what is the actual moment length, magnetic moment length? Again, if you take the as if isolated atom or ion in your sample, so it comes from the Hund's rule, as I have already said. Now question is, when you do Newton diffraction, means incident wave falls, Newton beam falls and gets scattered, and this is the scattering momentum transfer. The Newton magnetic moment mu n, which I have said already, there is this, I go back to that to connect it. The Newton magnetic moment and the electronic magnetic moment or atomic magnetic moment, it doesn't see electron by electron. In a, let us say Fe2 plus, there are unpaired electrons in the 3D cell. So that has caused a net moment of that Fe2 plus ion. So what Newton will see, the Newton's own magnetic moment will interact with the magnetic moment of Fe2 plus. Okay? Or if you have manganese, let us say manganese 3 plus. So Newton magnetic moment will have interaction with the manganese 3 plus magnetic moment. Okay, so it is the interaction between two magnetic dipoles, Newton magnetic dipole and your atomic or ionic magnetic dipole. Now the question what I am raising to you, neutron when it interacts with this, how much moment Newton will see? Is it the Newton will see the full moment or something else? Answer is that it does not see the full moment. Okay, how it comes is a big derivation. I have done already many times in my life, but today I show you from this that this is what is some vector q, which is defined as small k cross product with capital K, again cross product with small k. And what is this? Okay, this is known as the magnetic interaction vector. This comes under the dipole approximation, and which is very, very valid. Something called magnetic interaction vector. So essentially what I'll be concluding end of this, that neutron magnetic moment does not see the full atomic or ionic moment when it interacts. Okay, it sees something what the moment which is perpendicular to the scattering vector q. This is my scattering vector. I have the atomic moment or ionic moment here sitting in a atom or ion in your sample. Let us say you have Fe3O4 or you have LaMnO3 or any kind of sample. Then let us say in manganese has the moment, manganese 3 plus has the moment. The component of the moment, which is perpendicular component with respect to q vector, scattering vector. So that perpendicular component only will be seen by neutron in neutron magnetic scattering. Why it is like this? The nature of the interaction, essentially. So that theoretical formalism you can see any book on magnetic neutron scattering. This is known as the dipole approximation, and that is excellent. It is matches with the experimental and theoretical results and so on. There is no doubt in this. It is well established. See, neutron diffraction. One thing you must know, whether it is neutron diffraction or neutron elastic scattering, data analysis is straightforward. There is no, of course, one has to learn it, but then there is no ambiguity in it. But so far, I have not told you one thing, that I have been saying that X-ray diffraction, and I am always talking about X-ray being the electromagnetic radiation. It has got electric field vector and that electric field vector is quite strong, and it gives the charge scattering, and it gives you the atomic charge, the charge cloud positional periodicity, that is atomic periodicity. Okay, but in case of neutron scattering, neutron interacts with the nucleus. So in a periodic, in a crystalline material, neutron will see the periodicity of the nuclei. Okay, but essentially nuclear periodicity and atomic charge cloud periodicity, both essentially same. So it gives the crystalline it gives information about crystallinity of the material. Okay, but so far when I was talking for X-ray, I have been always talking about X-ray electric field. See, X-ray being electromagnetic radiation, there is another field vector which is called the magnetic field vector. So E and E and V, right? E and H. But what happens is in any electromagnetic radiation, as you know, the amplitude-wise electric field vector is about 2 orders of magnitude stronger. So magnetic field vector in any electromagnetic radiation about 2 orders of magnitude weaker than the electric field vector. So when you do the scattering experiment, cross-section wise, it is 4 orders of magnitude weaker, because amplitude wise 2 orders, so cross-section wise 4 orders of magnitude weaker. So as a result, though when you are using X-ray from a material, even if the material is magnetic, so you essentially do not get any observable scattering due to unpaired moments, due to unpaired electrons, due to magnetic nature of the sample. What I mean by that, even if you take a ferromagnetic material, iron, let us say, do X-ray diffraction sitting in your lab, and iron being BCC structure, you get the Bragg peaks only due to the atomic positional periodicity of the BCC structure. That is, one atom is sitting at 000, another atom is sitting at half, and this kind of periodic arrangements of atom, lattice constant, lattice, and all these bond angle, bond distance, and so on, all these structural parameters you get. But in a lab, sitting in lab, you do not get any information about the magnetic scattering, though it is there, it is non-zero, but it is not measurable with respect to the X-ray part, because with respect to the electric field component contribution. But I must add that the high brilliant synchrotron facilities, there the incident photon flux is so high that though the magnetic scattering is 4 orders of magnitude weaker than the charge scattering for X-ray, but it is measurable, provided you can separate out the charge scattering and magnetic scattering, and that is beautifully done by using certain analyzer crystals, and I will not go into details of that. So, you go to any synchrotron facility website, there are n number of activities on magnetic scattering as well. So because the charge scattering is stopped, that intensity does not go to the detector. What detector measures? Only the magnetic scattering part. Though relative sense, it is 4 orders of magnitude compared to the electric part, electric scattering, the electric field scattering. But since the incident flux is very, very high, though still that so-called weaker component is a measurable quantity, because you have filtered out the charge part by suitable analyzer. That's why, so the good statement would be that if you go to powerful synchrotron facilities, there even you can do magnetic X-ray scattering, like magnetic neutron scattering. But I must tell you that I myself have done the magnetic resonance X-ray scattering using Petra facility in Germany. But data analysis is very, very complex. It is not that I'm a newcomer from X-ray magnetic scattering point of view. That is so, but that answer lies beyond that, because the theory, the data, the way the magnetic X-ray scattering theory it is developed. If you see the data analysis, it is very, very complex. I told all those things to tell you that magnetic neutron scattering is so novel, so straightforward, so easy to interpret the data, it unparalleled, and you get microscopic understanding. Okay. Now coming back to this. So coming back to this, that atomic or ionic magnetic moment, the component of the moment which is perpendicular to Q, this one, Newton magnetic moment will see only that component and interact. But since we know from the theory that it sees only the perpendicular component, it sees only the perpendicular component, then obviously I can calculate back what is the full moment. So then I do get to know about the full moment, though Newton has seen only the perpendicular, interacted with the perpendicular component, but I do get back my total full moment. So that loss of information is not there, but I am talking how the probe works. That is what you need to appreciate. Now, what is this? How this interaction, so-called this Newton magnetic moment. So there is something called this magnetic interaction vector Q, and it is small k cross capital K cross small k, and if you expand it, it is capital K minus small k, and dot product of small k and capital K. Now, what is small k? Q, vector Q by magnitude Q. That means along the Q, along this momentum transfer, this is a unit vector, right? So along this Q, along this scattering vector, this is small k is the unit vector. So you take only the direction. Okay, you forget the magnitude of Q. Rather, you take the direction, sense. And what is capital K? Is the direction of the magnetic moment. So nothing but this is your capital K direction. That's why I have written here capital K. So capital K is the direction of the atomic or ionic magnetic moment, dipole moment, sitting in a particular atom or ion in your sample. So this is the direction of capital K, and so there's a mix. This is small k. This is capital K. This is small k. Small k along the Q vector. So then, if you take this, this is a cross product, and it comes like this. So from that it comes. You can do this little exercise. Probably we can give that how to do it, how to get it. You will see that moment component which is perpendicular to Q, that only S means spin of electron perpendicular to Q, or you can say mu, moment of electron means not single electron, whatever the 3d orbital net total, or whatever 4f orbital total, that is orbital means spin and orbital, total j, I mean. So that is the total moment of atom or ion mu, and mu perpendicular to the Q. So this is what comes. So this is my conclusion. In magnetic neutron scattering, the component of the moment which is perpendicular to the scattering vector Q is only sensitive for magnetic neutron scattering. Fair enough. Now you may say this is a little complicated situation. Should not have been. We would have felt happy without this, complicated situation. No, answer is no. See, once you have this kind of dependence, it gives you some kind of handling parameter. Why I am making this statement? Suppose, let us say, the moment, whatever be the direction, that is what gives the scattering. Fine, you get it stated. That is what gives you the scattering. Fine, but then how you have no control on that from outside. Okay, the fact is that from the inherent theory of magnetic neutron scattering, only the perpendicular component comes, Now you can play with this perpendicular component. So how we do that? You can apply magnetic field, and then you can rotate this direction by some means. So that means it is a handling parameter. Okay, that is the advantage rather, not disadvantage. What I mean by that. Now I want to define one more term. See, so far I have defined the B. I go back. What is my B? Small b. This is the scattering amplitude due to nuclear interaction, strong nuclear interaction between neutron and nucleus of your atom or ion, right? Now I have corresponding B, I have P for magnetic scattering. Okay. So this is what I am saying, the P, which is nothing but the magnetic scattering length for neutron scattering, P. Magnetic scattering length, B was nuclear scattering length, and this is magnetic scattering length. And this is the expression for that, okay? In this expression, what you see, mu, total moment of the atomic or ionic moment, this vector I mean, it is there, and multiplied by f of q, which I just talked before, that form factor, which is a q dependent, and form factor is 1 at q equal to 0. As you increase this q, as you increase this 2 theta, this guy keeps on decreasing and it goes to 0 at very, very high q. So that means very, very larger 2 theta. That's why magnetic intensity, it is a multiplicative. Though you have the moment, though you are dealing with a magnetic material and magnetic element is there, that has got mu, but in a scattering experiment, the magnetic scattering amplitude depends on what q your Bragg peak has occurred. If the Bragg peak has occurred, let us say at 120 degree 2 theta, it is a gone case, because their form factor is almost like a 0. So 0 multiplied by any large value is almost, so P is almost 0. So you don't see magnetic intensity, magnetic scattering. That is what I am trying to tell you. This is a prefactor. I'll come to that. And one more factor, that's Q, same guy, this Q, what is sitting here. So when you talk about the magnitude, you have to take the magnitude of Q. So this is nothing but this perpendicular component, okay, which I just said. So this is what is your magnetic scattering length. So you have 3 kinds of scattering length. In case of neutron scattering, neutron nuclear scattering length, that is B. Neutron magnetic scattering length, that is your P. And of course, if you take X-ray scattering, there it is F, okay. Now let us go to this prefactor, this prefactor. So, or let us talk about the magnetic scattering length in terms of the absolute unit. See, when you do magnetic scattering from a magnetic material, so end of the day, what you have to say? In my first lecture, I said, you have to draw the magnetic unit cell, right? What is magnetic unit cell? You have to tell that, let us say you have a crystalline material. So what is the size of the magnetic unit cell? Means you want to repeat that same block in all 3 directions, and you have to get the entire domain, okay? Now that magnetic unit cell, the building block of the magnetic domain, so that A, B, C, alpha, beta, gamma of the magnetic cell you have to get. You have to also know where those magnetic atoms are sitting in your magnetic unit cell, either at half 0, 0, half, or 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, or 0, 0, 0. That is knowing the position. Third is that you have to say, if it is magnetic, how much moment it carries, ordered moment, not the disordered moment, not the paramagnetic moment, ordered moment, means below the magnetic ordering temperature, how many Bohr magnetars sitting with one particular atom or ion in a crystalline site, the mu B, in terms of mu B, in terms of Bohr magneton. So that is what comes from this P, the quantitative number, how many Bohr magnetons are there in a given atom or ion which is sitting in a particular position, in equivalent position in a unit cell. That is the moment value. And one more, what is the orientation of that moment with respect to A, B, C? Then what is the relative orientation between 2 magnetic moments? That I already said, that will define ferromagnet. or antiferromagnet, or one large, one small, antiparallel is ferrimagnet, and then of course many other complicated structures can be there. You will learn slowly down the line. So what is this? When you talk about the absolute value of magnetic scattering amplitude, in terms of Bohr magneton, it is like this. Here the unit is in centimeter. It is scattering length. It is scattering amplitude, nothing but scattering length. It is the length. Dimension is length. So here mu is in Bohr magneton. That I must tell you. It is in scattering length. So when you do the magnetic scattering, all these values, you give in the PCR file, that will slowly come. The input file, okay, the B value, P value, and so on. So once you give those values, then only you are able to explain the observed pattern. So B value and P value, all those, okay. Now, in this case, mu, I must tell you, it is in Bohr magneton unit. So now you see, that means in magnetic scattering amplitude, so this is the expression here, total spin, form factor, Landis's factor, and the prefactor, which is known as classical electron radius, the E square by m e c square, is the electron charge of electron, m is the electron mass, and so on. But if you put all those values, it comes 0.269, 10 to minus 12, when in centimeter unit. You left with only the moment value which you are talking about, want to measure, and multiply by the form factor due to this magnetic shell. Okay, so it will depend upon at what Q value. So for a given magnetic atom, mu is fixed, let us say. But if that gives a Bragg peak at a lower 2 theta, lower Q, this F is maximum at Q equal to 0, forward scattering. F will be decreasing as you go away from Q equal to 0, means larger and larger 2 theta values. So that is what. That's why again I repeat, in magnetic neutron scattering, you always look for the Bragg peaks at lower 2 theta. So there only you will see observable magnetic intensity. Okay. And mu, as I said, in atomic magnetic moment, Bohr magneton, it is basically L plus 2s. This is more relevant for rare earths. As you know, it has got spin, unpaired spin, it has got orbital moment, and you have this LS coupling. Okay, this is actually the G naught. As you know, I'll not go into that. And F of Q is the magnetic form factor of an ion. Q is the wave vector transfer Ki minus Kf. Okay, so far what I said. So far, I only introduced magnetic scattering length, which is in case of nucleus, it is B. I also talked about which part of moment is effective. I also talked about that form factor, magnetic form factor. I also talked about X-ray case, X-ray form factor. I also talked about the atoms being vibrating with respect to the mean position. That has some implication on your measured structure factor. I also talked about when you calculate structure factor, how to count the atoms, the atomic positions which are in inequivalent crystallographic sites. You only count those. Then what you get here called something called structure factor. This is the Kittel level understanding. This is called structure factor. If for a given reflection HKL, and this is this prefactor B, scattering length. This is the phase factor where you have HKL peak and position of that particular jth atom, xj, yj, zj, and this is your temperature factor, Debye-Oeller factor, okay, due to this deviation, root mean square deviation of the atoms from its mean position. If there is no deviation, the atom is fixed at its mean position, this factor will be 1. That means no reduction of this structure factor, okay. As atoms vibrate more, a larger amplitude, this guy B will be large, there's a minus factor, so this will keep lowering the value of structure factor. So, and you are taking summation over all the atoms or ions in your so-called unit cell. So once this H-scale concept is there, Bragg peak concept is there, that means you have inherently you have taken the concept of periodic structure. Atoms are periodically arranged. You have the unit cell concept, okay? And then you are counting the number of atoms or ions within the unit cell. When you talk about non-magnetic case in the paramagnetic state or even the magnetic state, but talking about the crystal structure, you need to count all the atoms in the periodic, all the atoms in the unit cell. What I mean by that, let us say you are talking about MnO. Manganese is magnetic, oxygen is non-magnetic. So-called non-magnetic means nothing is non-magnetic, it's a diamagnet. Okay, so there is no order movement. Now in that case, you will count not only all manganese, wherever they are sitting in the unit cell, you will also count all oxygens, because you are talking about the scattering of neutrons due to nucleus. So nucleus is always there, whether atom is manganese or oxygen, whether magnetic or non-magnetic. So you have no choice. But when you talk about the magnetic scattering, magnetic unit cell, you forget about non-magnetic atoms like or ions. Oxygen you forget. If your manganese is only magnetic, you count manganese. Okay. Now you may say in unknown case, we don't know what is magnetic. You give some moment and see whether you are able to explain your observed pattern. That is the way to go. So-called magnetic atoms also sometimes may not be ordered. Okay. Then that information come, you give it and see. Your analysis will tell you that this guy though supposed to be magnetic, but no, there is no observable moment. So that is the message. So, but in simpler language, when you talk about the magnetic structure, you count only the magnetic atoms or ions. Okay. So I go take this. So this is called your structure factor. Now I go to that one. This is my structure factor. Okay. So now in experiment, what to measure? Basically, you measure the scattering cross section. D sigma d omega. Omega is the solid angle, right? Differential scattering cross section. So this is your structure factor. So cross section is proportional to modulus mod square of the structure factor. That's why I went back to that view graph. This is your structure factor. Mod square of that, actually very precisely, f tau multiplied by f tau star, if it is complex. Okay. So this is what. So that means structure factor dictates how much will be the scatter, how much will be the your differential scattering cross section, and you have this prefactor. What are those prefactors? This is 2 pi by to the power cube. N is the number of scatterers. As you know, if you put, let us say, only 1 Avogadro number of atoms, and if you put 10 Avogadro number of atoms, so number of scatterer more. So proportional to the scattering will be the differential scattering cross section will increase. So it is proportional to the number of scatterers. And what is V naught? The unit cell volume. And what is this factor? See, this is nothing to do with the per se neutron diffraction. It is any diffraction theory, all, right? That this you get the diffraction, this Bragg-Peak intensity will be non-zero at that Q value, and Q matches with the reciprocal lattice vector tau. That is the the Ewell's pair concept. Okay, so you don't get Bragg-Peaks at all positions when the Q vector Ki minus Kf it hits your tau vector in the reciprocal lattice space, right? So I will not go into that. If you have any clarity problem, please go back to Kittel and get your doubts clarified. Okay. So this is the simple diffraction condition, nothing else. So what I essentially say, differential scattering cross section is proportional to this structure factor mod square. Okay. And structure factor I have already defined. Okay. Slightly different notation. This is for only the nuclear case B. This is the de Broglie factor. This is your phase factor. This is all the positions. This is our tau. Okay, tau is the reciprocal lattice vector. Fine. And again, structure factor. Once again, you see the detailed expression. Now, differential scattering cross section. I said it is this mod square of this. Now, in a diffraction experiment, Actually, you measure this intensity, I H scale, for a given H scale, and you see what are the other parameters, something called S. S is nothing but the scale factor. I'll elaborate that. J is called the multiplicity of the H scale plane. L is the Lorentz factor. Again, this part, if you have done X-ray diffraction, you know all this. These are not new for neutron scattering. Okay? This structure factor is also known for X-ray scattering. But here, I am only saying it is in the case of neutron. What is the only difference? That here you have come the neutron nuclear scattering length. That is the only essentially difference. Okay? So, this S is nothing but the constant factor. Constant factor, suppose you are doing experiment, one using our facility at Dhuba reactor BRC, same and sample amount is fixed, number of scatter are fixed, and you take the same sample, go to France ILL and put an instrument. So your number of scatter are fixed. Let us say you assume that entire sample is emerged in the beam, full beam is falling on the sample. Now since ILL, the intensity of the incident flux is higher compared to our reactor, so your number of number of this neutron flux which is falling on the sample, that is higher. So you will be getting higher intensity. That means observed intensity will be higher. So that's why some of the cases where we have difficulty to measure here, we go to that kind of place where your incident flux, neutron flux is higher. So this is like, the scale factor, okay? So, or in a given instrument, let us say we have a diffractometer in Dhuba, I can design the instrument, let us say I make more tighter spatial collimation, okay? That means, how do you do that? You put more strict collimators. So you are cutting down the beam. Of course, you are gaining the spatial resolution. You want to separate out two Bragg peaks which are closely placed, okay? That is the way it is done, right? But what you lose? You lose the intensity. So that means, S factor will change. That means depending upon the instrument configuration, the collimation. You can also imagine you are changing the sample. I am doing today experiment for the same compound today with, let us say, 1 gram. Tomorrow I do with 3 grams. So number of scatterers put in the beam different. So that all will lead to the different scale factor. Okay. Now, J, what is the other one? J. J is called the multiplicity factor. Of course, if you do single crystal diffraction, J is always 1 because for a given orientation of the sample, you measure only one peak at a time, one H scale. But for powder samples, you know that if you deal with the cubic sample, when you talk about 100 peak, you have how many you know? I don't have to give the answer, right? 100, 010, 001, 1 bar 00, 01 bar 0, and 001 bar. So those many peaks, those many H scales will appear at the same 2 theta, same scattering angle. So it became 6 with the cubic symmetry. So that is called multiplicity, and that is relevant when you do powder diffraction. Means your sample is in polycrystalline form, not a single domain, single crystal. And L, which is known as the Lorentz factor, so that depends upon the shape of the samples. Okay, either your sample is cylindrical or the sample is flat. So there are definite formula, a definite expression, and all those things you don't have to bother if you really use Newton. The powerful programs are there. Many of you know, for example, the Rietveld refinement. That is the methodology, but there are many programs, very robust programs are available. For example, full flow, wind plot, and so on, so on. So if you use one of those, all those expressions are inbuilt. So and depending upon once you talk about this specific system, specific phase group, and so on, and specific geometry of the sample, and so on, these will be taken care. These are all inbuilt, of course. But if you have to know, how it works. But what is your more or less unknown, and you will be extracting out of this experiment is this one. That is the structure factor, where everything is, because that will tell you where these atoms are sitting. Okay, this will tell you what is the value of B. This will tell you in the magnetic case what is the value of magnetic scattering in P. That means what is the moment. So this is what is of importance to us when you do actual experiment. Okay. Now I go, I'm saying with regard to scattering between neutron and the nucleus. Now I looked at here, if the sample is magnetic. So my B has been replaced by P. This is the magnetic scattering length, P. So it is almost similar. As you see, earlier it was the structure factor, the nuclear structure factor. Now you have come the magnetic structure factor. Otherwise it is same. Okay? But the reciprocal tau for M need not be same as tau for nuclear. Okay? See, in a reciprocal space, where is your this reciprocal lattice sitting? It is in Weyl sphere. With regard to crystalline, with regard to non-magnetic, crystalline material and magnetic need not be same. Okay, that I have given you example on the very first day. Let us say for certain antiferromagnetic material, for antiferromagnetic material, certain new Bragg peaks do appear at a different 2 theta, while in the paramagnetic phase, while a sample is not magnetically ordered, moments are not magnetically ordered, those peaks are absent. So additional symmetry, a lower symmetry is involved. So that's why this tau can be, need not be always, can be very different from the nuclear, corresponding nuclear part. Okay? And otherwise this expression for this magnetic structure factor goes more or less same way, except this B you replace by P, magnetic scattering length. And I have told you the Newton from the dipole approximation. I told you again and again, this Newton will see only the moment of your atomic or ionic moment which is perpendicular to the Q vector. That only is seen by Newton. Newton magnetic moment is seen by that and gives you this scattering. But nevertheless, we know that only the perpendicular component give, so we can get back by program what finally analysis gives you the total moment by taking into that consideration that look, it has only seen the perpendicular component, so what is my original component, net component, what is the original value, what is the net value, so that is taken care. And so as I said, this is the magnetic scattering length and expression I have already said. This also I have told you in terms of actual Bohr magnetons, it looks little, I go back once again. That is very important. This is my actual value, 0.269, 10 to minus 12. That is when I am talking with this magnetic scattering length in centimeter. So we have the moment and we have the form factor. Okay. Form factor tables are also inbuilt, or you can give on your own. So when my colleague, Dr. Anil Jain, when he speaks next time, slowly he will show you that how this analysis is done. So there the F of Q, when you do magnetic data analysis, magnetic diffraction data analysis, you have the liberty to ask the program, take this F of Q, or you can give it externally if that kind of demands comes. Both options are there. But then essentially you get this mu value. Okay? So this is what you get. Now, but when you, let's say, crystalline material you have, so material, Newton will see both the B as well as P, right? So B part will give you the nuclear structure factor and P part will give you magnetic structure factor, and then total observed intensity. What you measure is this nuclear structure factor square proportional to I am giving, because the proportionality factors I have told you, S, J, L and so on. So nuclear structure factor mod square and magnetic structure factor mod square, and here Q square comes when you talk about the intensity. But I must tell you, this is this is true. The Q square goes, that means what? Nuclear scattering, that is nuclear structure factor square, and magnetic structure factor square multiplied by the Q square, the same Q, the magnetic interaction vector. Again I go back, the same Q, square of that. Okay, this Q, square of that. But you can do it. I only make the statement. You can do it like this, provided you are doing so-called unpolarized neutron diffraction. Now, one more thing I brought in without giving details. What I mean by that, neutron is a spinor particle. Okay, so the incident beam which falls on the sample can have both the states with equal probability, that is 50% out of 100 newtons, 50 newtons spin projection up, another 50 newtons spin projection down. So that is called unpolarized. So if you deal with that kind of situation, then this is what is applicable. But one can go for other experiments like polarized neutron. Means you use only one spin state of neutron to start with, and that will fall on your sample. Then this changes. Okay, so but I will only make a statement. If you other day, first day questions were there. If you use polarized neutron diffraction, you can measure very, very small moment, even 0.01 Bohr magnet, and you can measure sitting in an atom or ion. But from this unpolarized neutron, when you use this kind of formula, then it will be hard to measure below half Bohr magneton, below 0.5 Bohr magneton. I will only make this statement, and with this, I think I should stop. And now rest what it comes, as you see, just to give the temptation, my colleague will talk. Once you got the magnetic diffraction pattern by doing neutron diffraction, what do you do with that? How do you put all those theoretical concepts what I just talked about, so that you get to know about the microscopic picture, microscopic understanding of the magnetism of the magnetic atoms, their position, and their how much moment attached to that, what is the orientation of the moment with respect to crystallography direction, what is the relative orientation, what is the nature of the magnetic structure, and so on, so that you will slowly learn. So these kind of things will come. Okay, so my colleague will cover. So with this, I think I am showing you what you will expect over next some lectures. Okay, some of you are familiar. That's why showing you all this stuff. Okay, how to get this magnetic moment orientation vector, what is called propagation vector, symmetry analysis, magnetic structure, and so on. These are okay. Slowly you will learn. So I'll stop with this. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer. If you have any further question. So I understand you do not have any question. Just see, I am waiting for 1 or 2 minutes. If question comes, I will be. Or you can ask the question, neutroncourse@gmail.com. That is also possible. You can go through these notes once again, go through my lecture once again, and if you find that there are some understanding issue, you can send email. Okay? Okay then, so let us stop here. Thank you so much. So next day, that is Wednesday, 3 p.m., my colleague Dr. Anil Jain will come and he will continue from this point. Thank you.